So, Mr. Winslow, how did you end up going to Missouri for college? Were there a lot of schools recruiting you back in the day?
No, I played on a very good high school team that had a lot of scouts, college scouts coming in from all over the country, and um, they happened to bump into me when they watched film, and coaches, my high school coaches, really promoted the fact that they thought I might be okay on a college level.
Were any other schools recruiting you besides Missouri?
Kansas State, Northwestern.
What made you choose Missouri over the other schools?
It just seemed like a good fit. The guys on the team did a good job of promoting how close it was to home, 120 miles away. A lot of guys were from the St. Louis area, and it felt like a nice little family to be a part of.
Was Al Onfrio the one who recruited you mostly, or was it some of the other guys?
Al Onofrio was the head coach when I came in.
What was it like to play for Al?
I'm sorry.
What was it like to play for Al?
Oh, a very caring man. Very gave a great deal of care for his players and respected them, expected them to react accordingly, and always do what was best. He always said, if you can pass the three-prong test, whatever you do, how it reflects on your parents, your school, and his football team, then if you pass those three tests, it's okay.
Playing tight end in college in the 70s, it wasn't like it is today. I mean, most of the schools weren't passing schools. Tight ends were mostly blocking for the running backs. Was it different in Missouri, or was it pretty much the same thing there?
It was pretty much the same thing. I think my senior year I had, 29 catches, 30 catches, something like that. In the 4 years I was there, 71 catches.
Who was your biggest rival at Missouri when you played there?
Oh, it was always Kansas. The border war, Missouri versus Kansas.
Did you have a memorable college game that you kind of think that was your defining moment or your favorite game?
I don't know about favorite game. I remember, every Saturday in Columbia was special because it was such an event to have a football game, and I don't remember ever playing in bad weather at a home game in Columbia. It was snow on a Monday or a Tuesday, but on Saturday, just before kickoff, the sun would come out, and we also had a beautiful day. We had bad weather in Nebraska and Oklahoma, and places like that, but never at home during a home game in my 4 years.
Did you have any idea the Chargers were going to draft you in the 79 draft?
No. This is the early days of ESPN, and back in 1979, you got the information from the radio station, or when they called you is how you tracked the draft. There wasn't televised. There wasn't all the analysis going on, and so you got it either by a phone call or the radio station.
The Chargers made a trade with Cleveland to get that draft pick. So how did you first find out the Chargers drafted you?
I was, my senior year, my roommate and I, Leo Lewis, had moved to a area outside of Columbia, which I'm sure is incorporated by now, but it was a fourplex, and we moved into, and the night before the draft, we lost phone service. So I had to ride down to the local newspaper, the Columbia Tribune, and that's when I found out I had gotten drafted.
So you joined San Diego, and Don Coryell is your coach. What was it like the first time you met Don?
Well, the first thing Coach Coryell said to me was that, how would you like to play some wide receiver? And to me, that was music to my ears, because most of the time that I was at Missouri, I spent time working out with the wide receivers. He was usually the only tight end around, but I had more fun lining up wide and running those routes than I did running the routes the tight end had at Missouri.
So
And that's how I always tell young people who, want to play tight end, play wide receiver and then let them move you inside.
what's the advantage of them letting you play wide receiver before tight end for a young guy, or for you in particular?
Well, you have to get in and out of your breaks. You have to be precise with your routes. And it's a lot of times running a route is not the fastest. It's the person who runs the smoothest and gets in and out of the break the quickest. So a guy who runs a 4 or 4.40 may not be as good of a route runner as somebody who runs a 4.6. If that 4.6 is nice and smooth and precise in their routes and understand the importance of the timing.
You had some good receivers. You had John Jefferson, you had Charlie Joyner, and you had a great quarterback in Dan Fouts. Did Charlie Joyner kind of take you under his wing and help you out when you first joined the Chargers?
Well, it wasn't. It was something more organic than than the very direct route of taking somebody under your wing. Ernie Zampese was a receiver coach in San Diego, and then of course offensive coordinator for the team, and of course Al Saunders was our receiver coach. It was always watch the guy, watch Charlie, watch JJ, watch Wes. That's how you learn. And the younger guys, the older guys taught the younger guys, but it was always watch, and pointing out things that he was doing.
What made Don Coryell such a great coach?
He wasn't afraid to throw the football. He believed in throwing the ball. The quickest way to the goal is to score points. And the quickest way to get there is to throw it down the field. A lot of coaches, especially in those late 70s, early 80s, they just feared the middle of the field. He did.
He still had that AFL mentality, it seemed like. What they had is just throw the ball in the 60s in that league, whereas the NFL was more rushing. And they kind of brought it to the NFL, it seemed like.
Well, you see that today. Some offensive coordinators forget that the field is as large as it is. And they really work in that 5, 7, 10-yard range. And, mentally and physically, the field just shrinks on you.
So when you have Dan Fouts at quarterback, when he was in the huddle, did he have complete control of that huddle and decide what plays were being run, or did it come from the sidelines?
When Dan was looking to the sideline, getting the signals, people in the huddle might have been conversing. When he stepped in the huddle, everything got quiet, and all eyes were on Dan. We would run, depending on which team we were playing, we had a check with me system that would allow him to get into the pass or get into the run, or be able to check it off at the line. So he had a lot of options based on what he saw when he got under center.
When you had those 89 catches in 1980, that was unheard of for any receiver, especially at tight end. Was there a lot of pressure on you to come through for that team?
Oh, no. You're so young and so uninformed about what it means to, catch that many balls. You're just too young to understand the significance of it. At the time, all you're thinking about is doing your job. And that was the great thing about playing on that team, was I was just a piece of that offense. I wasn't the one who had to carry the load. So there was a week where I would catch 2 or 3 passes, and there was a week I would catch 5 or 6. And that was up to the quarterback to take what the defense gave us. And I think that year, JJ had 82 or 83 catches, and Charlie had 79.
So
now, that was
pretty
unheard
spread
of.
out.
Yeah,
And you
it
had
was spread out. We had running backs who had 40, 35, 40, 45 catches. Clarence Williams, Mike Thomas. So it was the beauty of the offense. And if you take a look at it, maybe it was an insult to me because they doubled everybody else because I'm the one who can hurt them the least.
so so when they traded John Jefferson to Green Bay and brought in Wes Chandler, did the offense change at all, or was it just business as usual?
It was business as usual. We didn't change anything. The things, JJ has his strength, Wes has his strengths, and it just plugged him in. Um, it just kept going.
Another guy you got to give Coryell credit for using was a running back, James Brooks. Again, no one passed the running backs out of the backfield then, but again, James Brooks could, in essence, catch and run the ball, which I think made you guys a better team.
Well, again, that's the beauty of a coach who understands the personnel. Doesn't get caught up into setting parameters on players, but watching them in practice and watching the things they do during practice, after practice, etc., and allow and take advantage of it. We put in the tight end option pass because I would stay out of after practice and play catch with the receivers or like throwing the ball around. So it's like, oh well, let's put this in. Let's use this skill. And the same thing with James Brooks, who's probably pound for pound one of the better players in the National Football League at the time.
When you caught 5 touchdown passes in the game, that was unheard of for a wide receiver, let alone a tight end. I don't think any tight ends even got that many. What was that game like?
Well, it was a must-win for us. Going into Oakland, we had started off the season strong and then ran into that mid-season, rut, and we needed that victory. If we'd have lost that game in Oakland, we would have been eliminated from the playoffs. And so we go into the game just, we're playing the Raiders up there, and we just got to win. And we got into the game, and things just started to slow. The Raiders like to play man-to-man. They like to rush forward. They thought they can get pressure on you. And Dan just did a great job of taking advantage of the mismatches.
You mentioned that you were single-teamed a lot in 1980. How did they not double, triple team you when they see how strong you have to get your first or second touchdown pass?
Well, you can double team, but then again, pick your poison. Do you want Wes Chandler, John Jefferson with the ball in the middle of the field running? Do you want Charlie Joyner on a quick route who's going to make somebody miss and get to the end zone? Do you want the ball in the hands of Chuck Muncie? Do you want that ball in the hands of James Brooks? If you're, make the big slow guy beat you.
You weren't too slow, though, back in the day.
I'm sorry?
You weren't that slow, though. You were one of the fastest wide receivers out there at that time.
Pure speed, no. It was, again, our offense was, you've got to be at a point in time when you're supposed to be. And the fact that Dan didn't hold the ball, those 3, 5-step, 7-step drops, and the timing, and then, of course, the quarterback learns the receiver, and the receiver learns the quarterback. So it may not be exactly 8 yards in a break. It might be 7.5 yards, whatever, but that quarterback knows, that receiver knows where to put the ball and expects that receiver to be there. And that was the beauty of our offense. It was really like a big choreographed event. It was a ballet.
Another great game was that playoff game against the Dolphins in 1982. They call it the Epic in Miami. 13 passes, 166 yards, a touchdown. You had to think to yourself, I'm exhausted after this game. This is taking everything out of me.
Well, it was hot that day, hot that night, and so many things that you remember about that game. But again, it's those adjustments that you make. I was the motion guy, and everybody's playing in the same conditions. We were using Zoom, Zip, Fly, all kinds of motion, and I was the motion guy. So that took a toll on me. And then, Miami got a little physical with me. And then, of course, it's a playoff game, so you've got all the injuries and issues that you've dealt with during the year that come into play. I thought I prepared myself properly for the weather and the conditions and the humidity, but it just all took a toll. But when we got to a situation where they realized that we can't continue to just have emotion, the coaches took some of that burden off of me and used other players in motion, or in some cases went away from it.
So you pinched a nerve in your shoulder that game. You had dehydration, cramps, stitches in the lip. Did you think to yourself, you know what, maybe I should just sit out the rest of this game?
No, no way. We were up, I think we were up, so 17 nothing or 17-7, whatever it was. Maybe 17 nothing. And I go to the sideline, and Charlie Joyner's sitting there, and the whole team is celebrating, and Charlie's sitting on the bench. And I think it's right after Wes has scored on the punt return. And Charlie's sitting there, and he's got this long look on his face, and I think he's hurt, so I go over to check on him. Everybody on the sideline, on our sideline, celebrating. And Charlie says to me, being the veteran that he is, we're too high, we're too excited. And I said, what do you mean? And he said to me, and I never will forget it. He said, you don't come into Miami and do this to a Don Shula football team. He said he's going to pull Woodley. He's going to put in Strock. They're going to start throwing that football, and we're going to be here all day. In the very next series, Coach Shula pulled Woodley, the rookie out of LSU. He put in Don Strock, the veteran, the gunslinger, and we were there the rest of the day. Never will forget that. And I got upset when Charlie told me that, because I just did not want to be a part. I could not see myself being a part of a team that had this big of a lead and then lost it. So whenever I came out the game, I was trying to get back into the game.
Whose decision was it to put you on special teams when you blocked that field goal to send the game into overtime?
Well, that was planned. That's the do or die team. We need this play to win, so you put the best people in there, no matter what position, no matter what salary, no matter what their profile is, to do the job, because we need to win this game. And so I was on the do or die field goal block team, and my job was to try to time it up and leap over the middle. And I remember getting in the huddle, and I'm in the huddle with Leroy Jones, Louis Kelcher, Fred Dean, Gary Johnson, and they're looking at me, and I'm looking at them, because we just line up during practice. During walkthrough, we line up for that. Now it's game time, and here we are looking at each other, and I'm going, okay, guys, just give me some penetration. Give me some penetration. I'm going to get it. I'll get it. And I was just trying to talk it up, and really thought that we could block this thing. Just so happens they got some penetration, and I timed it, and it hit my finger. It didn't knock it down. Wasn't very manly while I slapped it to the ground. It just hit my finger, which made it take a few rotations off the ball, which made it come up short.
So you go from playing in extreme heat down there in Miami to the next game. Was it against the Bengals, and the coldest game in NFL history?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
They had to be system shock. I mean, nowadays they probably would not have played that game. Did you guys think to yourself the NFL should not play this game? They should postpone it?
Well, we found out afterwards that there was some discussion about that, whether the game should be played or not. And, urban legend is that they called a cold weather expert, a physician, a cold weather expert in Chicago, and asked if the players would be okay. And I'm sure the cold weather expert was sitting in his den next to the fireplace with a blanket over him and the dog laying across his feet, and said, "Oh yeah, they'll be okay if they just dress properly." That's my version of it.
People talk about the ice. People talk about the ice bowl, but I think that game was even colder than the ice bowl.
The ice bowl was, I think it was 18 degrees below zero wind chill factor. So I remember watching that game, and with the wind chill factor, ours was 59 below.
When I talk to other guys,
yeah, it's
a little colder. When I talked to Dan Fouts, he said that football felt like a rock when he was throwing it. What was it like to catch the ball in that game?
It was a rock. The field was a rock. Your thigh pads were a rock. Your helmet was a rock. Everything just froze. And today, no, they would not cancel that game today. Today, they have cold weather equipment. We were making it up. You would get your ankles taped. You would put on a sock. You would put a plastic bag over your foot, put on another sock, and then put on your shoe. And the bag was there to keep the cold air from getting to the sweat on your feet so you wouldn't get frostbite. The gloves that I wore were two pair of gloves. One was, a pair of baseball batting gloves, and the other pair was a pair of neoprene scuba diving gloves that they had cut down as small as they possibly could. There was no Under Armour in those days. We might have been okay with the Under Armour bodysuit, cold weather bodysuit. So we had either pantyhose or thermal underwear.
Was there any thought about changing your game plan going into that game and just run the ball because it was so cold?
Well, we did what we have been doing all year. We tried to make some adjustments in the passing game, go to a shorter game and run the ball. You got Chuck Muncie back there. But, give the Bengals credit. They did a better job of adjusting to the weather and was able to put a bunch of points up. Remember the first pass that Dan threw, the wind just took it and just blew it away.
So did you think to yourself, you know what, we're going to make a couple Super Bowls because we're so loaded on offense? And when it didn't happen, were you kind of surprised?
When we played in those consecutive AFC championship games, that one against the Bengals and the year before against the Raiders, we thought that we were has a good chance of anybody of playing in the Super Bowl, but just came up short twice. Once that very fortuitous bounce that the Raiders got early in the game. At home, we played in San Diego the first year. We played in the AFC Championship game. I think it was Raymond Chester. The ball got tipped and went right into his hands, and he, kind of ran to the end zone for the touchdown. We ended up losing by, I think it was 6 points. And then, of course, the next year, we come through after Miami. We ended up in Cincinnati in one of the coldest games in NFL history.
John Gruden says that what made you great was they lined you up all over the field, 2-point stances, 3-point stances, and that was unheard of at that time. Again, was your flexibility one of the major keys to your success?
Well, yeah, but I tell people this all the time. it wasn't me to be. It wasn't like I was so unique. There were other players in the league who had the same ability. Charlie Sanders in Detroit, John Mackey did similar things in the earlier days of the tight end. And Jackie Smith with the Cardinals was a great athlete, but it was Don Coryell who said, "Let's use Kellen this way." And they trusted me, with the offense and knowing the different, knowing the concepts, understanding the concepts, and playing the different roles, and then just moved me around, gave me that ability to do that. So there were other guys who could have done this before me and during the time I was playing, but a lot of coaches just didn't have the innovation to do it.
How'd you know when it was time to call it a career?
There's a fire that burns inside every player. And if you're honest with yourself, when that fire starts to diminish and it's time to do something else. It takes an inner reflection. And as long as that fire is burning, and the people will give you a chance, you want to be out there. It was time for me to go do something else. The team had changed. I had gone from being one of the youngest on the team to one of the oldest on the team. Dan was gone. Charlie was gone. Wes was gone. Billy Shields was gone. Rolf Bernerschke was gone. I think it was me and Donnie Masick and Dennis McKnight were the ones that were left.
How did it feel like when you found out you're going in the Pro Football Hall of Fame?
I still don't believe it. I go to the hall. They treat me so well with so much reverence, and you're talking to a guy who almost didn't play football in high school, who came one decision away changes your entire life. And I was very close to the decision to not play. And then here you are. But everywhere that I've played, I've been so fortunate. I played on a great high school football team. Because of that, the schools came around looking for guys, and they bumped into me. I played on a great college football teams. We were loaded. Played with James Wilder, Earl Gant, Gary Ellis, Leo Lewis. We were training out guys playing in the pros, offensive and defensive linemen, et cetera, a bunch of defensive backs. Eric Wright for the 49ers. We played together at Missouri. And again, I fit in at the right time. Then I fall in the draft. I end up in San Diego. And I'm the final piece of that puzzle to that offense. And so it's been a very blessed, very fortunate situation for me. And that's why I'm in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. If I'd have played with another team at that time, you'd be calling somebody else right now.
You mentioned you almost didn't play football in high school. Why was that?
Well, I didn't play football until my senior year.
Did you not want to play, or you didn't get a chance?
I was working. I went out for football when I was a sophomore in high school, and I was like, well, I'm gonna go do something else. This is not, very exciting. Twice a day and all that kind of good stuff. And we're gonna come back tomorrow and do the same thing. So I got a job at United Parcel Service, working after school, and that's what I did for my sophomore and junior year. And Cornelius Perry and Jimmy Lewis, the two coaches on the football team, Cornelius Perry being the head football coach and Jimmy Lewis being the assistant, came to my geometry class one day, just before the end of my junior year in high school, and they told me I belonged on the football field. And I'm looking at them like, what? I can still remember the hallways still remember standing there, but next to the door of my geometry teacher's class, and then they took me down to the principal's office, and he talked to me about the advantages of playing sports. And Coach Perry told me I do things in his gym class that he'd been trying to teach other players to do, and I just do it. And they convinced me to come out for football. And there's my life. I'm on that track. If I'd have told them no, yeah.
Education,
if
obviously.
They had seen something in me I didn't see in myself, we're not talking.
Education was important to you. Again, you just didn't retire. You wouldn't go to law school. What made you make that decision?
One of the advantages of not playing since I was in high school was that I saw other things. I come from a different perspective. My original plan to go to college was to work after school at UPS, go to junior college, then transfer to a 4-year school, like most of the guys I work with on the line at UPS. That's what they were doing, and that's how I was going to go to college. So when it came time to leave the game, but realizing that, well, this is not going to last another 10 years, it's time to do something else, start putting a plan together and start working that plan. And some of the best advice I got was to spend that time in transition in school. And that's a safe place to go. When people, when the economy makes a downturn and people get laid off, higher education's enrollment goes up. So the same thing happened to me. It was a good, safe place. And since I don't like blood, law school is better than medical school.
You guys could start a law firm, you Hall of Famers. You, Ron Mix, Nick Bunicani, Alan Page. It's amazing how many guys in the Hall of Fame are lawyers.
Well, again, especially in today's conversations we're having in society about the national anthem and whether players should stand or not, and the commentaries that I'm hearing on television just blow me away when people say, well, players don't know what they're standing for, what they're kneeling for. And that's just so insulting. You cannot be a person, you not have a low IQ or not understand the concepts and play this game and play it well. You just can't. And I tell people that all the time. I realized, I understood football because one day I realized football is nothing but chess. And I played chess in high school. I lettered in chess for 3 years, and football in 1. But when I realized that football and chess were the same thing, I went, oh, I get this now. I know what I do. Better yet, I know why I do it. And I know what everybody else does. And I know why they do it. And the game just made sense to me. But the people just think that because you play a game that you're not very bright. And so we have so many guys who've gone off and have become professionals, who become doctors, who become lawyers, who become very successful business people, who become leaders, and football is the basis for that. And I just get so upset when I hear those stereotypical type things that go on.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, football players, they come from all different backgrounds and they have to learn to work together. And again, I think people can learn that from football and any sports. Do that in society. Everybody's got to work together towards one common goal.
Towards one common goal, exactly. And when I see, there's so much that people can learn through that. Being involved is something that's higher than yourself, that's bigger than you. And when in this country, when we start focusing on things that are bigger than me as an individual, then we will become the country that we're supposed to be.
When I talked to Alan Page, I never realized he was a collector of like Civil War memorabilia. He has flags from the KKK because he realizes how important history is. But people don't talk about that. They don't realize how important history and education are.
No, they don't. And if we don't learn it, we're doomed to repeat it. And the worst part is that we won't be aware that we're repeating it because we didn't learn it. And that's what we're going through in this country right now. We're just rehashing things over, and we got to come together and move forward and respect other people. You know, a lot of things that we do that you see on the news, that you hear people commenting about, I just sit there and go, did they read the Constitution? Did they fail civics class or what? I mean, come on. You know, free speech means free speech.
You could say whatever you want as long as it doesn't illegal. But again, you could say what you want. But again, people got to realize there's consequences to their actions.
Well, there are consequences when you are. There are consequences when you're hurting someone else. And there's consequences to everybody's actions, of course, but you know, people when they use that excuse as why Colin Kaepernick is not in the league, I just shake my head because that's yeah.
A lot of a lot of Hall of Famers get upset with some of these guys going in now that say that I earned this, I deserve this, I had this coming to me. They say that no, it's an honor to be in the Hall of Fame. You didn't earn it. You didn't do this. Again, it's an honor. Don't say that it's an entitlement to be in the Hall of Fame. How do you feel about that?
Well, it's a team sport. You can't get there by yourself. And people realize that after a while. Depends on at what age you come into the hall. Really affects your perception of how you got there. So we have to look at that maturity thing because, again, if you are 35, 36 coming in and you've been out of the league 5 years, you might have a different perspective 10 years later when you're 45 and you get a chance to look back on things. Because we all grow, we all mature, we all do those things. And, you know, I've learned not to judge people and be upset with people because they come from their perspective. But you know, I'm not going to sit here and criticize people's speeches and what they say. But as they get older and they mature more, then I love to hear that speech.
Ray Nitschke kind of took all these Hall of Famers under his wing. Then it was Deacon Jones. Is there someone now that one of the Hall of Famers or two of them that basically try to guide the other Hall of Famers on the new ones on the right way to act and behave?
Well, it's not a matter of act and behave. It's just an understanding of what you're getting into, what this really means. It's hard for one grown man to tell another grown man how to act and behave. And again, everybody comes to the table with their own experiences, which help formulate those things. I think if you're talking about leaders in the hall right now that take the lead and set the tone, you are looking at Willie Lanier.
I think Larry Little's another guy who's not afraid to take the lead.
No, because he's been a leader his entire life. And of course, he comes to the hall with a very interesting background of having played at a historically black college university, and then finding himself just working his way up through the ranks and now into the position that he is in society, and of course being in the hall and how everybody respects him. And when he speaks, you know, everybody gets quiet and they listen.
Another guy is Bobby Bell. I mean, he never shuts up. He keeps going. But again, what he's gone through in life is incredible.
Yeah, Bobby's, you have to have a Bobby Bell on every team. you've got to have a guy who plays at the level that he does and enjoys life and keeps things loose. And even when he's got the jovial side, there's that serious side when his voice changes. And all of a sudden you're drawn into the conversation. You realize just how serious this man really is and how intelligent he is. And the same thing happens, with Willie. Willie is that soft-spoken leader who just lets things go around, and then he'll raise his hand or he'll stand up or he'll, say, I want to say something, and then the whole crowd gets quiet. So you need that mixture, you need that blend, and we are a reflection of the guys who played in the league, so you end up with that in the hall also. But every team has that, every good team has that mixture.
A lot of Hall of Famers say Jim
Anthony
Brown.
Munoz is another one.
Oh, exactly.
Anthony Munoz is another one that people look up to. Yeah.
A lot of people say that Jim Brown was the greatest player in the history of the game. I don't know if you saw Jim play or saw the videos. Do you agree with that?
Jim, it's so hard to compare across platforms, decades, eras, rule changes, etc. Jim was so much better than everybody else. Point, just flat out. He was so much better. And he was bigger, he was stronger, he was faster, he was playing a position where he had the ball the majority of the time, so his impact was always great. And so you have to look at it by the era and to see who was that superior player during that era, because they've changed. Jim was a big running back. Now every team has a big running back or two huge running backs. I was one of the bigger tight ends in the league when I played at 6'5", 245, 250. I'm the H-back now. You got guys who are 6'6", 265 pounds playing tight end and running for legitimate 4.6 40s. So that ballroom talk about who was the greatest of all time, I just kind of let go in one ear and one out, go in one ear and out the other, and really appreciate the player for the way they played and the things that they did when they did play.
Your son was a great.
Jim Brown was just so much better than everybody else. It's just ridiculous.
You mentioned Jim Brown being able to do it all. Another guy they compared to Jim Brown was a former teammate of yours, Chuck Muncie, and they said if he didn't have the issues with drugs, that he might have broken some of Jim Brown's records. Do you agree with that?
Yes. Chuck, oh man, it was so amazing. Yeah, good, great basketball player. Jump out the gym. Just could have been anything he wanted to be. When Chuck came to us in San Diego, we were like, oh wow, no, he can't be that big. And he's just huge. And the coaching staff understood what they had and, what his ability. And when he came to play, there was nobody better. In one game against Denver, basically I was the fullback and Chuck was the tailback. So you're talking about a 250-pound tight end / fullback and a 245, 46, 48-pound tailback in Chuck Muncie. So we would line up in the I formation, which is daunting within itself, just physically, and then we would go in motion. I would go in motion, and we would run a play based on what Dan saw and how Denver reacted to the motion. And we lost that game. 2 or 3 weeks later, we played Denver again, and we changed the strategy where we lined up in the I formation and snapped the ball. And Denver was waiting for us to make the adjustment, and we snapped the ball and caught them off guard. And to me, that was just brilliant coaching. But when Chuck would get the ball and you're leading as a fullback, you want to get out of his way. You don't want Chuck running up behind you or over you because he will. So you're really moving. You're really looking for somebody to put a helmet on. And by the way, that defensive back or linebacker, they're looking for you because they don't want to run up against Chuck. But he was so much fun to watch. He could catch the ball coming out of the backfield. He could run over you, run away from you, and make you miss. Great vision, just great vision.